Hey everybody. In this video, we're going to briefly talk about what African American psychology is and also the approach we're going to take to studying African American psychology this semester. One of the first, or the first, assigned reading that you will have in this class is Chapter 1 from the textbook by Faye Belgrave and Allison, titled African American Psychology. And in that chapter, she does a good job of distinguishing African psychology from African American psychology. She also does a great job of highlighting several classic quintessential African American psychologists and their bodies of work. A lot of times when students take this class, one of the things that they say is, Dr. Cothran, I've never, in any of my other psychology classes, I've never read about an African American psychologist or their body of work. There's not been any discussion of a formal area called African American psychology. We learn about Wilhelm Wundt, we learn about Sigmund Freud, we learn about Erik Erikson, we learn about E.B. Titchener and B.F. Skinner, but we don't learn about African American thought that is unique to their cosmology. And so this class is unique in that I think it bridges that gap, and it stands in the gap and helps to fill some of those missing pieces. So this quote is on page 5 of Faye Belgrave and Allison's text, and I'd like for you to read it. You can pause the video if you need to. So you'll notice from that quote that she's talking about, from an emic, authentic perspective, this group of people has a unique collectivistic worldview. And it's so unique to them that honestly, they need a formal area of study that respects that and that is reflective of that, such that you can't have this one-size-fits-all European model that you just readily apply to African Americans and think that it's going to do the best possible job of helping to understand their mental health and wellness and helping and do the best possible job of helping to improve their mental health and wellness. And so she hints at that again on this page, but the entire chapter does a really good job of going into a great amount of depth. So now that we have established what a good definition of African American psychology is and a good resource for you to go and learn more about that, I will quickly move to the next point in our video today, which focuses on how will this class be taught? What's the general approach that we're going to take this semester toward learning more about African American psychology? So part of the things, there are many things that I've infused in this course, but some of those are the classic quintessential key terms throughout the field that I wanted to make sure were embodied in this class, because I think that's going to do a really good job of not just helping you learn what those terms are and experience those terms, but also help you do the best job of understanding African American psychology and unique perspectives toward the goal of not just knowing and understanding it, but thinking about ways that it can be optimized and improved. So this class will be taught in the spirit of Ubuntu, Seku, and also Sankofa. First up, Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a South African Nguni term, and it is defined as, quote, I am who I am because of who we all are. And so it speaks to the connectedness among all of the members of the group, right? Because remember, we talk about African Americans having this very collectivistic orientation, and certainly we hail originally from Africa when we're talking about the definition of African Americans that is explored in Belgrave and Allison. And so I am who I am, and I can be my best self only if you are somewhere working to be your best self, right? So in the context of this class, I'm up here teaching, so to speak, and mapping out a learning plan and providing learning materials, and that's going to be successful only if you're out there learning and doing the readings and concentrating and doing your best work, on the assignments, right? So these things have to go hand in hand and have to work together in order to be optimally successful. So this South African Nguni term embodies the ideas of connection and community, and also mutual responsibility and caring for all. How does it relate to this class? As I was just alluding to, I will provide and present and promote and post a lot of materials that are designed to clearly help you grasp some of the classic key terms, help you grasp and understand the concepts and theories. I will design assignments that will help you explore those and take personal ownership of those and help you apply and extend those. You have to do the work of reading what is posted, of working to understand the concepts and working to do your best job and best work as you apply and extend those concepts, right? So that's one of the ways in which Ubuntu relates to the class. And you'll notice a lot of our assignments are very collectivistic in orientation. Next up, Seku. Seku is an ancient Kemetic term. And you'll notice Kemet is referenced in the chapter by Belgrave and Allison. Many of you are already familiar, though, with this notion of ancient Kemet and its significance to African culture, but certainly also African American culture. I know traditionally in our psychology classes, we are largely taught to believe that psychology, the formal area of study that we refer to now as psychology, it began in the 1800s in Europe in the laboratory of Wilhelm Wundt in different areas, like Titchener and Skinner and Freud and Erickson and Horney and others. They are the classic names that are credited with being the first to document, the formal area of psychology and experimental studies, etc. Well, that is not true. Ancient Kemet stood thousands of years before the Common Era. So we're talking about thousands of years ago. There were centers of higher learning throughout Kemet where people from Europe, people from Asia traveled thousands of miles so that they could study in the universities of ancient Kemet with the world's leading mathematicians and engineers and scientists, biologists, chemists, and medical doctors. So Seku is an ancient Kemetic term, and the definition of it refers to the understanding within, the illuminator, that light that propels, that emanates from within a person, the I and the soul of a being, right? So there's a differentiation and an acknowledgement there between the physical person, the blood and the vessels and the cells, and the soul and the heart. Now think about that. Thousands of years, as some people say, before the birth of Christ, or thousands of years before the Common Era, there were scholars in ancient Kemet already talking about psychology and what it means for you to have emotional health and physical health and spiritual health and mental health and physical health, and how all of those need to be in alignment for you to obtain and experience optimal health. Let that sink in. If you would like to read more, you can certainly reference some of the work by Naim Akbar. We will also read some of his work this semester as well. And I can provide you with some references if you, again, would like to read more about ancient Kemites and some of those institutions of higher learning. Benio Cannon has written extensively about it, and Kobe Cambone has also written extensively about it. How does this concept relate to this class? We are going to fully acknowledge that psychology did not begin in the 1800s in some laboratory in Europe. We stand on the foundation that Seku predates it by thousands of years and deserves its rightful place in history. and we will continue to speak its name. Last up, Sankofa. It's a Twi term hailing from Ghana. The definition of Sankofa is to go back and fetch what was lost. And many of you are already familiar with this notion of Sankofa and the symbols of Sankofa. And honestly, if this were the face-to-face class, we would watch the movie Sankofa and we would explore the evolution of Shola in that movie and talk about how it relates to crosses and aggressors theory, but we just don't have the capabilities right now. But if you are so inclined and you want to watch that movie, it is available through various outlets. But back to this, Sankofa is a Twi term hailing from Ghana. And a lot of you are probably familiar with those sayings of, you got to know where you've been in order to know where you're going. Or here's another one, a person who doesn't know her history is doomed to repeat it. All of those are consistent with this notion of Sankofa, that you got to look behind you and see what your ancestors and those who've gone before you experienced, hear what they have to say. Learn about their perceptions so that you can use that to inform about where you are and where you need to be going and how you need to be getting there. We are going to fully embrace that in this class, throughout the class, but certainly one of the pieces by Naeem Akbar that we're going to explore this semester looks at the experience of African Americans during the transatlantic slave trade and how present day that continues to frame the way in which they view the world, the way in which they view themselves, and the way in which they choose to express themselves via their behavior. So these three terms are central to our approach to the semester: Ubuntu, Seku, and also Sankofa, and we will speak those terms regularly. There is a handout that I've posted titled Key Terms. I want you to learn those because all of those terms will be used this semester, some more than others, but I want you to certainly leave the class having a working knowledge of all of those terms on that sheet. I'm going to skip ahead to this classic quote. Guthrie is also a giant in the field. And so if you're so inclined, I encourage you to read more from that work. Also, gosh, there's so many. Clark and Clark, White, oh man, Naeem Akbar, Thomas Parham. There's so many classic African-American psychologists whose work is so quintessential to the field. But Guthrie is just one. And this is a quote. I am not going to read it to you for the sake of time. So I will encourage you to just pause the video here, read the quote. And then when you unpause it, I will just recap it by stating, it is not the case that mental health and wellness is this one-size-fits-all model, right? So people's cultures significantly influence their health and physical health and wellness. So obviously their cultures and cultural experiences are going to influence their mental health and emotional health and spiritual health, etc., health and wellness. So we, as a group of people, need to acknowledge that African American psychology is a distinct area that deserves a unique approach to studying it, understanding it, and making recommendations about, its improvement. Same thing goes for Asian American psychology and Latino psychology and Native and Aboriginal psychology. These are real things. There are associations for Black psychologists, Asians, Latino psychologists, Native, First Nationer, Aboriginal psychology. There are distinct areas of study, distinct associations, journals, etc. Behavioral models, also identity developmental models. So I just encourage you to embrace the notion that it is not the case that one size fits all or one model fits all people. And Okay, so in this class, we are exploring a holistic view of the health and wellness of the group, right? So I know this class is only 8 weeks long. We can only cover so much, but we're going to try to do a survey approach to different segments of African American life, as you see depicted on this picture: recreation, physical environment, education, safety, and all the hashtag campaigns, politics and government, health and wellness, communication, economics. There's so many areas within a group and an individual's lived experience, right? But there's only so much time in this class, but we are going to try to take a survey approach to studying some of the hot topics and areas of research in those segments of African American life. And we'll look at, for example, how each of the segments impacts and is impacted by the others, as well as by the mental and physical health and wellness of the group. And we're going to try to focus most of our time and energy on the ways that African American psychology can be positively impacted via discussion and remodeling. And so you'll notice there will be some policy advocacy pieces that we will complete as a class this semester. So the format, there will definitely be seminars, however asynchronous, and lectures like this one, components. There will be a number of activities. All of them are required. Please complete them all. There will be films and also guest lecturers. There will be a service learning component. I will say this, it's a lot to take in, it's a lot to process, but it is well worth it. It's well worth your time and energy to investigate, explore, and really set out to experience the heft of the information that is so frequently left out of your other science books and your other history books. So the onus is on you to be open and to receive and to do the work. In that, please know that maturity and civility are super key. Here's an example of just one of the heftier topics we will explore this semester. You'll notice at the bottom in the center of this slide is a drawing of Sarah Bartman. Some of you are familiar with her story. She also went by the moniker Hottentot Venus. At one point, she was enslaved and was sold as a traveling side act to a carnival type of show. And people would pay money to buy tickets so they could view her rotund backside. Stated differently, she had a very large butt and very large thighs, and so people would pay to look at her genitalia and her backside. She died a very young woman, and the humiliation and degradation did not end there. They dissected her remains and put them on display in various museums. And approximately 100 years after her death, her remains were taken down from display where people were still paying to go in and view her genitalia and buttocks. After about 100 years, they took those down, returned her remains, and interred them. Now, I said all that to say, that's a lot. I mean, think about the heft of the degradation and the misogynation and the blatant, horrible objectification of that woman. Those things have been impacting Black women for hundreds of years. They did not start with Sarah Bartman, and they certainly have not ended. But with that as a historical backdrop, think about then the historical relevance of Nicki Minaj's Anaconda, or WAP, Meg Thee Stallion's WAP, or Beyonce's booty shots at every single musical award show that she either headlines or stars in, or is asked to present on, or receives an award on. You're going to always see the butt shot. So think about the heft, the historical heft and relevance of these shots that you're looking at on this slide. Now, this is not to take away from the artistry of Anaconda or the Beehive or WAP. But when you think about it from that historical lens, it changes the nature. Here's another and perhaps clearer question that helps to highlight this historic miscegenation, that helps to call into question what we're looking at when we see such a celebration of Anaconda and of WAP. So something else to consider. Why is the celebration for Megan Pete dropping WAP greater than the outcry for Megan Pete saying she's being victimized and abused by Daystar Peterson? So those of you who follow Meg Thee Stallion know that her given name is Megan Pete. And those of you who follow this guy who shot at her and who subsequently shot her for trying to get out of a vehicle probably know that his given name is Daystar Peterson. So why were people so excited and talkative and tweeting and retweeting and sharing and hashtagging this WAP, WAP, WAP? And they were more responsive to that and the T and the A that was on display and being celebrated in WAP than they were to the victimization and to the abuse and to the lack of comfort and sensitivity and protection of her as a Black woman when she said she had been shot in a domestic violence dispute. Think about it. So when you look back and see how Sarah Bartman was treated even almost 100 years after her death, being celebrated and debased because of her T and her A, and completely humiliated and denigrated and disregarded, dismissed, dishonored, just dissed. That's awful when you think about somebody being dissected and put on display so you can walk by and pay $5 to look at their genitalia. And when you think about that against this backdrop, think about how Sankofa helps you understand or nuances your understanding of the situation and why there might be a bigger celebration of WAP than there is an outcry for Megan Pete's protection. Think about Ubuntu, because it's not just Megan Pete, hashtag Breonna Taylor. Why are we so much more celebratory of Black women's TNA than we are protective of their lives? So again, we're going to talk about some heavy topics this semester. Civility and respect are key. But so is critical and analytical thinking. So we're going to get into it. So elsewhere we've gone over the, to recap, bring it down. Elsewhere we've gone over the Blackboard page and how quintessential that is, the syllabus, expectations, and also introductions. We've now talked about how important certain key terms and constructs are going to be this semester. So I encourage you to embrace those, learn more about those, and to really just do the work. You know, experience the material and do the work. And I think that you will find your mind will grow. You will learn a lot and you will get the most out of this class. You have my email address. You also know the online scheduler website that I use. So please don't hesitate to reach out. If you have questions or comments or suggestions, I'm looking forward to hearing them. I'm looking forward to reading your work and watching the videos and interacting with you synchronously and asynchronously. Again, I encourage you to reach out whenever you want or need to, and I'm looking forward to working with you. Thanks, everybody.